Good afternoon, Anderson. Really an awesome pleasure to be here today. And I'm going to start by telling you that I intend to be brutally frank because the issue of social media that we all keep talking about is suddenly assumed remarkably huge proportions in this country. You will agree with me or will you not? Yeah. I'll tell you from a very deep personal experience. Till a few years ago, my two daughters used to call me the coolest dad in the world. And honestly, I was flattered. Who wouldn't be? Then something like the social media happened between us, and our relationship transformed. Now they call me a loser. And for some reason, I'm supposed to feel very flattered by that term. Uh, the loser is supposed to be the new lingo of affection. And I think a lot of the youngsters sitting at the back will probably empathize with me. I only thought losers applied to Andy Murray, to Mitt Romney, to Abhishek Bachchan. But now I've discovered that I'm in a very august company, so I'm very thrilled about that. I can also tell you something else that happened. You know, I got onto Twitter and I began tweeting and stuff like that. And the other day, just a couple of days ago, those who follow me on Twitter here will know, somebody wrote to me and said, you know what, you are the most hated man on Twitter. Now, I'll tell you something else which is crazy about social media. I discovered that if you are the most abused man on Twitter, you go back home strutting like a peacock because that's supposed to be a huge compliment. Because if you get abused on Twitter, you have done something terribly right. So clearly the rules of social engagement in the new technological world has gone through a transformation which has resulted in my hair having fallen considerably even after this program was announced. Let me tell you, it's a stressful experience. And, when I think about it, and I said, who ought to be the most abused man on Twitter today? Shah Rukh Khan, Ashish Nandi, Salman Rushdie, poor little Kamal Hassan. I mean, there are a whole lot of luminaries waiting in the waiting list, waiting to be given this accolade of being the most abused man. But here I am, ladies and gentlemen, in front of you, a symbol, a manifestation of the angst and the torture and the anxiety of this new Gen Y that sends us all into a tailspin and makes a party that I support get the shivers and the sweat, thinking about how to combat this new emerging, I don't know whether to call it a monster, whether to call it a beautiful creature in the making, but it's called social media. It's incredible, but it's been truly a life-changing experience already. So to answer your question, is social media going to be a game changer? The answer is yes. There's no doubt about it. And I'll tell you why we need to recognize at the moment that this formidable entity is unstoppable. But it will come with its challenges. My talk today, where 15 minutes are yet to go, is going to focus on telling you where it's gone right. But more important, to all those youngsters sitting at the back, telling them that the game may have just begun, but the rules in this game will keep changing. This is one of the strangest things to have happened, and I'll tell you why I love social media myself. Because when I used to write articles, for different newspapers and magazines, and ask any creative writer, he will tell you the most brutal thing that can happen to you is that your article comes back with a rejection. And it comes back 6 months after the topic is dead and stale. Okay? By which time the editor has already left his job, you can't kill him. Because you don't know where the hell is he now. Now, the second point is the fact that if he takes your article, he decides to change the topic. And all writers will know that the topic is like that most creative part where you're trying to encapsulate the whole magic of your creation. He'll change the topic to something terribly bland and banal that will drive you to near suicide. Then you'll see the sight of your kids and you'll change your mind. But, your wife will say, well, you can think about it again. But the point I'm going to make is this, that, you felt destroyed. Your creativity was being taken away from you. And overnight you discover now that, hang on, I have a blog I can write on. I can go to a Twitter where I can write whatever I like. And I can tell you that, the other wonderful people that I read about, for the last couple of days who are sitting here in front of me are all perhaps somewhere those stories that need to be told. And I think social media, blogs, Twitter, YouTube, Flickr, whatever you want to use, is creating that space. So we are all on the same page. Let me tell you, all of us here are on the same page. Social media is relevant. It is here to be. But my job here is also to be a bit of a bad guy. You know what? If you're always going to sit and say everything is hunky-dory, then I think we're going to be fooling ourselves. Okay? Let me give you the positives first. Barack Obama. Everybody in any social media conference will tell you, Barack Obama, the President of the United States for the second time, did a remarkable campaign using social media, where America saw Hispanics becoming a very crucial part of the demography, where they saw young people come into the voting domain, and where they, most important of all, discovered is a medium to connect with people, because television, a lot of people, the mainstream media in America, they began to call it lamestream media, where they said, hang on, television is just overdoing the whole story. So Barack Obama worked. How many followers does Barack Obama have, ladies and gentlemen? Anybody wants to take a guess? Any, hazard a guess, you can't be wrong. 45 million? Well, it's 20 million less. 25 million followers is what Barack Obama has. All right? And he used the media campaign of social media brilliantly to win the job of the most powerful man on earth. Social media was critical in making Barack Obama win the second campaign, which tells you the power of social media is enormous, because he occupied the White House where the social media had a big role to play. Obviously, Mitt Romney contributed liberally. Now, the second point, and that's critical. And don't forget, Barack Obama has 25 million followers, which exceeds the population of Australia. 5 times that of Singapore. Will not compare India, of course, which is why we are a remarkable story in the making. Point number 2, the Delhi gangrape. Do we need to even talk about that? Ghastly, cruel, nasty, murderous. It was terrible. It was a tragedy of epic proportions. We can't discuss that here. We can keep talking about it till the cows come home. But you know what? It's incredible. The same democracy, the same bureaucracy, the same parliament, the same governments that we all criticize, it has gone ahead and already passed an ordinance on rape. It's historic. And it tells you somewhere that when we have to respond, we can. It is not an empty rhetoric. It is not, some kind of a lame duck motherhood statement that people like me can come here and make in a conference. Yes, we can, or, we should and we will. No, it has happened. And part of the responsibility, and a humongous part of it, goes to the people who hit the streets in the cold, chilly weather of Delhi. And I was there during that time for a couple of days. It was horrendously tough, but there were people who stayed till the midnight hour, volunteering on their own, and to some extent were responsible for creating the whole, noise factor to say, listen, we want something to change because this is bad. Now, we are not getting into the debate of whether it's an urban psyche or a XYZ psyche, but the reality is that today, social media is making people pause and listen. It's a success story of our times. I think we got to recognize that, the basics are there, that what makes social media a big success is instant, is global, is without any gatekeepers stopping you. There's no editor breathing down your neck. There's no registered letter you got to send. There's no courier you got to make. And bottom line is the fact that it can go viral in an instant. So 10 people here like the idea, they send it to 10 friends, and suddenly there are 100,000 likes, and the clout factor emerges as a big game changer. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a reality. In fact, it's such a reality that a man across the border by the name of Hafiz Saeed is also on Twitter. And he's writing all kinds of nasty things. And just imagine what he can do. He can write right now on his Twitter and say, you know what, I'm planning to attack this wonderful, sweet, loving, harmless, innocuous bunch of people in this conference here in Bangalore, and soon the entire country can come to a standstill. One Twitter statement can do that. That's incredible. I was in Mumbai, and I remember when 26/11 happened, the first thing that crossed our minds was if there had been Twitter at that point of time, there may have been many more people who could have perhaps been able to get through to a number of more avenues to get their lives saved. Maybe not just their friends on a BBM or an SMS would have known about it, but the world would have known about it. The media could have picked it up. It could have really been a very powerful story. The very critical point is the Arab Spring story. Everybody knows the Arab Spring story. It's huge. It changed a government in Egypt. And it is a fact that it was responsible for overthrowing a regime that at one point of time people thought was absolutely unshakable. Which brings you to the downside points. A few weeks ago, or rather a few months ago, when there was trouble in the Northeast, it was also an instrument which was getting to be abused. And when a problem happens in any part of the country, and this is a beautiful nation, this is a beautiful country, we are a thriving secular democracy. But yes, let's accept the challenges we have. There are certain vociferous forces which come at play, which exploit the vulnerabilities that we have. Now, you can't let social media become an irresponsible tool. You also know what happened when there was a very strangely dubious, YouTube, kind of a story made. And it resulted in so much of violence in the Middle East that finally at some point you found that there was an assassination of the ambassador to Libya who was gunned down in broad daylight. So there are challenges on both sides of the curve. So the bottom line. What is the bottom line? How many people in this country use social media today? Take a guess. 8-10 crores, roughly. They project it to go up to around 20 to 25 in the next 5 years. The number of people watching television is approximately around 75 crores. The number of people with mobile phones is already exceeding that 75 crores too. So if you look at these numbers, they tell you that tomorrow's phones are in the hands of young people, and not just us sitting in Bangalore and Mumbai and Delhi, but the people who live in the rural areas will have access to a mobile phone, and most mobile phones will end up becoming smartphones or will at least have the feature of an internet. Now that is a game changer. India is one day, ladies and gentlemen, going to be the biggest market for social media in the world, which lets me point out to you a very critical factor. And that is that, the truth is that with freedom or with authority in your hands will come responsibility. Who said that? Don't say Spider-Man. It wasn't Spider-Man. It was a man who was the president of the United States of America. Well, there's a spider who bites me every day. He doesn't have a good chat with me. It was the president of the United States, well, who didn't say it in exactly the same words, whose name was Franklin Roosevelt. It's in your hands, ladies and gentlemen, but you've got to be responsible about it. It's a revolutionary tool, but you can't afford to treat it as just another tool in your hands. You say something wrong about people, you don't have a right to hurt, right to be offensive, right to hurt the sentiments of people. We have a right to express ourselves, but also tell yourself others have a right to feel hurt if they genuinely feel that way. It's something that we cannot ignore. So let's always understand that it comes with a responsibility. And responsibility means control. You got to control that urge to go out there and, vent all your feelings and try and be very melodramatic about it. That's not social media. It's an interactive tool, but it's not social media if it's abused. And a point that I would like to bring to your notice here, a very, very critical point, linked again to another Roosevelt. The control is not an easy factor. They say that once Roosevelt was sitting in his office, and his little daughter came into the White House, his Oval Office. This was Theodore Roosevelt, the other Roosevelt, who was president in the early part of the 20th century. And his daughter came in, and he was having a very strategic discussion with the diplomat. So the diplomat said, "Excuse me, Mr. Roosevelt, there is a little girl in the room." So Mr. Roosevelt said, "Either I can be the president of the United States of America, or I can control my girl Alice." He couldn't do both at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important to remember that control isn't easy. You have to be able to understand that it is a tool, but it is not a tool that we can abuse. India is the market of the future for social media. Why? Because today, all of us, youngsters, middle-aged, old people, everyone, has now an access to a voice that you didn't have. Everybody, in a way, is a citizen journalist. Everybody here in this room can tomorrow do a sting operation. So please don't whisper anything casually after I've finished saying that this bearded man wasted too much of our time. I'm telling you that it's important for you to recognize that there is a very powerful vehicle in your hands. You can today audio tape, you can do a sting operation, you can change many things that you can't imagine. I also know that a lot of my friends in the electronic media and the print media listen to what you say. And very often the programs that happen at prime time are influenced by what you say. It's critical. It's phenomenal. Are you feeling strong about it? Everyone at the back? All right. Let me tell you, because I'm looking at that clock with some degree of religious intensity, and it's now crossed 15:17. I got 3 minutes to go. The point that I would like to make here is a very fundamental one. If you really want to make social media a game changer, there are two things which I think will be critical factors for us. The first is we got to listen. Now, you'll wonder why I'm saying listen. How do you listen on social media? Well, I'll tell you why. Because when we say interactive, I think we are actually fooling ourselves. I've seen people on social media who go and air their opinion, shove it down other people's throats, and don't care a damn what the other person says. If somebody says something against me, you buy my logic, otherwise you're damned. So we say it's interactive, but actually it's nothing but a one-way selling of your own hardcore thoughts and beliefs. That's not listening. Listening is attentive listening with respect and understanding the other point of view. Part of the problems why extremism dominates social media is because it becomes a one-sided tool. So we are technically interactive, but in practice you're not. If you don't listen, you don't make it. It's critical. When you have a view on a film or a political personality or a crusader or a social activist or a businessman or anybody, listen to what somebody else has to say, because the beauty of life is in listening to another point of view. That's what we are doing here today, listening to another point of view. The second, and a very critical point, is knowledge. I think in our country, we have begun to discount knowledge. We think, we talk of information highway, because everything is information. Everything is about, I can get it at the click of a mouse. Wikipedia has actually made you weak. Wikipedia is not research, it's just information. Knowledge creates information. Information doesn't create knowledge. If you don't have knowledge, you're really not going to be able to be a differentiator. I'm going to wrap up very soon. If you combine listening and you combine knowledge, you'll find that you have in you compassion, empathy, understanding. What makes a society? When you understand each other, when there's compassion, when there's caring, when there's affection. What does India need right now? Why, when you said, sir, that people get up in the morning and get angry, it's why? Because we tend to tell ourselves that, we are breaking down. But the truth is we are not listening. The truth is we are not practicing compassion. The truth is that we are not caring for each other, although we pretend to be this great country who are united and one. I think we do injustice to the nation and the idea of India. And you and everybody in this room as youngsters need to change it. My last line to you. There have been revolutions before without social media. There have been revolutions before. The American Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the revolutions in the French Revolution, they happened before. Did Mahatma Gandhi ever have access to social media? Did Mahatma Gandhi ever have, ladies and gentlemen, access to internet, to radio, even to television? He just was doing that through nothing but the goodwill of a moral power that caught on its own dimensions and was unstoppable. And that is the lesson we need to realize. You can have the technology, you can have the tools, but nothing in the world takes away from the beauty and the power of what I call as that purity of your communication, of your reach, of your intent. And that can only happen. Doesn't happen only through charisma. It happens through that powerful reach by which you're able to reach out to people in a voice that people trust, in a voice that people behave. I'm going to end right now by telling you, are you at the back of this room feeling empowered today that in your hands you have a reason to hope and to bring about a change in this country? Are you or are you not? Can I hear a louder yes or no? Yeah, and that is the key. It's in your hands. As they say, the future is in your hands. It literally is. Feel empowered. Now, whether I'm a loser or not, I don't know. But ladies and gentlemen, you can be a winner, and so can India. Thank you very much.